Like they thought they thought it was gonna be a red wave.
No, I'm talking about the governor.
Yeah.
But Governor Newsom run California, that's a big thing.
They said it looked like it's gonna be a runoff. He's up by 17,000 votes and 49.4 for this big county.
We'll just change residents for a little while. And vote for him and then I'll come back.
All right, y'all. Good afternoon. I see a couple people coming in online. Good afternoon. Let's go ahead and open with a quick word of prayer so we can get started. Father, we thank you for this day, God. We thank you for allowing us to gather together one more time to be about your business. We pray now that you would be with us in all that we say and do. In Jesus' name we pray. Amen. For those online, for those in the house, good afternoon. Again, this is just a Q&A session to see if anybody has any questions that we can address, any concerns that we can address as it relates to our bylaws. Remember, for those who may be new to this, we sent out a list of major revisions to the bylaws. If you've not received that major revision list, please contact the church office. We'll get it to you. Also, if you don't have a copy of the bylaws, again, contact the church office and we will get them to you. All right, that being said, open it up for any questions or comments. Those online, just type your questions in. If you're on YouTube, we see you. We can see your comments as well. So feel free to type in your questions on YouTube as well. We can see them on the broadcast. Good afternoon, Sister Peyton. Good afternoon, Sister McLean. Sister Hardy, good afternoon. Again, does anybody have any questions, comments, concerns that we need to address? Because if not, this is going to be short. Yes, sir.
My question. We're gonna have check and balance to the
I don't know what that means. I don't know what that means. Could you be specific?
okay, when somebody asks a question, this is what he says not there. Especially when it comes to finances, before any final decisions are made, they're gonna have to check into it and make sure what's correct, what's not correct.
I'm trying to answer your question as it relates to the bylaws. If there's, the bylaws state, the bylaws are not intended to address every operational procedure in the church. A bylaw is for governance of the church. So if what you're asking is about governance, and let me repeat the question for those online. The question was, is there going to be some level of check and balance as it relates to the finances in the bylaws? That was the question. So if there's a procedural question, operational question, that's generally addressed in policy and procedures, not necessarily addressed in the bylaws. If you want it addressed in the bylaws, then you need to show me specifically what you have in mind and show me what you're asking as it relates to the bylaws. I can't answer that question because I really don't know how to answer it. I can only say refer to the bylaws, and if it's something you want to add, let me know. Because I don't know how to answer that.
Next question is virtual voting.
Mhm.
We don't have any, way to ensure that it's proper and correct, we just eliminate that, and this time we're making sure that it's correct and done right properly.
Well, the question is not whether we should eliminate it. The question should be whether we should do it. And again, I'm not worrying about the how because there's so many ways to do it. So what we've left in the bylaws is the room to do it and the ability to figure out the best way how. For example, we could easily say, if you want to vote virtually, send us an email and we'll email you the ballot. So it's 1-to-1. So that if you send me an email, say I want to vote, we confirm that you're eligible to vote and then send you a ballot, you send it back. I mean, you could do it as simple as via email. So it's not hard to virtually vote. And again, as I mentioned in one of the previous meetings, there are many organizations who during COVID kept operating because they virtually voted. So virtual voting is not hard. Matter of fact, there's so much technology out there to do it. It's very easy. So that's not the question. The question is not how we do it. The question is, should we do it? And the answer is yes, because you do have people who, for various reasons, we learned nothing else through COVID, are active virtual members of the church. And if what we're saying is your vote, your membership matters, but then turn around and treat them as a second-class member because they're not physically in the building is not right. So given what we just went through with voting last night, we should be doing everything we can to make sure people can vote, not minimize how they vote. So personally, I think as long as we recognize the reality of virtual members, then we should do right by them and say, your vote matters. So let's figure out a way to get you to vote, whether you're in the building or not. And again, the technology is there. It's not hard. Even if we just did emails, it's not hard.
What governs who is eligible to vote? As far as, you're saying to check to see if you're eligible to vote?
It's in the bylaw. It talks about, you have, I think it's, and I can look it up if I have to, but I'm trying to do it off my head.
Okay.
Something like you got to be on roll 18 and have given within the last calendar year. That's the criteria to be eligible to vote. That's it. And the reason we did that is because we tried to make it simple, and this is back to the committee. The committee tried to make it simple to be able to validate somebody. So if you make it complicated, right, then you might mess around, quote, allow somebody to vote, and then next thing you know, somebody complaining that somebody voted that shouldn't. So we made it easy. Even if you gave $1 in the calendar year, you're eligible. We didn't even put a dollar amount on it. We didn't say you had to give this much. We never said anything. You had to be at church this many times. We didn't do any of that because that's hard to measure, right? So we kept it real simple. 18 on roll and have given in the past calendar year, 365 days. That's it.
Well, Pat, I'm one that's really not in favor of virtual voting. And the reason I'm not is because we don't ask people to come out here if it's something that you gotta vote on. We don't ask people to come out here every Sunday, every week. They're doing virtual now. But just like you asked, we voted on the investment and the people that were at the meeting could vote, but the ones that did virtually could not. And so I know because of the pandemic, but things are getting better. We're wearing masks, and people have been vaccinated and all of that. And so And then one other thing is, if you look at the roll, I guess before, when the people vote, and if you get like, for instance, maybe 100 people that voted something and then it passes. Well, you're gonna verify that those 100 people that voted prior to them voting, you're gonna, when they come online, who's gonna verify that they've already, that they are qualified? Because, and do we update our list all the time? Because there are people that have come here, they don't take their name off the roll, they don't tell you that they're gone, and so that's a lot of verification.
It's actually not. So first of all, let me address everything you said. Let me answer your question. So first of all, you're right in so much as that there are people who can come back, but virtual membership are people who are not in state or who can't get here, right? They are literally bedridden or sick and shut in or on deployment. They're in the military. The people who watch, for example, from international locations oftentimes are military members of the church. That's why they're away. That's why they're overseas. So while you do have people who can come here, there are people who can't, geographically or whatever, or physically or whatever. So that's them. Secondly, again, we made the notion of verifying people for voting still applies to the people who are in the room. Because even though you're in the room doesn't necessarily mean you're eligible to vote, right? So even if you had like in your analogy of 100 people sitting in church, we still would have to verify, depending on the vote was, whether those 100 people are really eligible to vote. Same thing. So the verification process, be it online or in the house, does not change, which is why we made it simple. So that if we need to do that, depending on the vote, we can, and it's not hard. All you gotta do is run a list, run one report. Who gave in the last year? Second report. Compare that with what's on roll. Those are people who vote. One of the things that we talked about, depending on what the vote was, because we all know, like this really, I think that kind of scrutiny is going to come down to things like picking a pastor, right? Some of the smaller things we do, we probably won't demand that level of scrutiny. But let's say it was picking a pastor. Let's say that was the vote. That's what we were voting on. What I would do is say, okay, before you even got to conference, if you walked in that door, what would happen is, what you would see at a voting poll, that there will be a table up there already with all the people who we've already said could be eligible to vote based on giving and roll. Put it by alphabet, A through G, right? Your last name A through G, go here's the table, see if your name is on this list. If your name is on the list, you sign in, I give you a ballot. Dolly Lynn, you on the list, here's your name, you sign in, we hand you a ballot, we cross your name off, you got a ballot, you can go sit down. Now I know that you've been vetted and that you got one ballot to vote. Matter of fact, this is exactly how they did it at PNBC when we were down there for the last convention. Mount Olive, they had a list of churches that were eligible to vote and the number of delegates. We went to the table, you signed in with your church, they handed you a ballot, and then you set in a section for those who had ballots that could vote. That way they control who they knew had a ballot and where they were sitting, right? So now you're sitting in the service, you got a ballot, you can vote. Those online can do the same thing. Let's say we did an email. We would announce, if you want to vote online, you need to send us your request now so we can verify you. So now you online, you send us the email, we say, yep, that's you. You are eligible. We send them one ballot. We cross their name off. They can only vote one time. So now everybody online has been verified. Everybody in the house has been verified. And now all you got to do when it's time to vote is hold up your ballot. Say, I vote aye or no.
And the church secretary was verify.
That's right.
That and the treasurer.
That's right.
But, now that makes sense.
And by the way, that's how it is in the bylaws. That's what it says, that's what we can do.
In the new bylaws?
In the new bylaws, it talks about that it doesn't, let me rephrase that because I don't want to say that. it says that we can come up with a process to do it. That would be a way to do it. Now, there are probably 5 other ways we could do it, but I'm just giving you an example of how easy it is. It's not that hard. It's just that we got to want to do it. And that's what I'm saying. That oftentimes we don't because it's going to take work. The vote you just talked about, we just took, for example, we didn't go to that level of scrutiny. Maybe we should have, maybe we shouldn't have, but we're going by the old bylaws still. We're not in new bylaw yet. So everything we're doing now is old bylaws, which is the reason, by the way, we're about to call another church conference and redo that vote. Because according to the old bylaws, if you don't have quorum, you have to redo the vote. Well, we didn't have quorum. Quorum is 75% of the church. We're a 1,000-member church. If you don't have 75% of 1,000, you don't have quorum, right? So the bylaws say if you don't have quorum, you got to do it again in 2 weeks. So we're going to have another vote and do the same thing in 2 weeks to make that vote valid. So my point is, there are ways to do this. It's not hard. We just got to want to do it. And that's why we try to make it as easy as we could, so that when we did it, we can, it could be easily done. Hold on, I got a question I just think came in. Why the limit ask in table content, Roman numerals, but not in the body? I'm not understanding that question, Yvonne. Can you repeat it? In table of contents, I'm sorry, I'm really not understanding that question. In the table of contents, there's Roman numerals, but not in the body of the document. Hold on a minute. I think I understand now. Hold on. So yes, it is. So I think if I understand the question, if you look at, for example, at the table of contents, where it says Roman numeral 1 governance, then if you go to page 6, it's going to say paragraph 1 or paragraph I, governance. So the Roman numerals in the table of contents correspond to the paragraph numbers in the document. I hope that answers your question. So again, if you look at elected officers, which is Roman numeral number 2 in the table of contents, if you go to hold on. Where's the start? Elected officers. Hold on. So, okay, I see it. It's off. I'll fix that. I already see what you're saying now. I got it. I see it. Because it should say elected officers number 2 should say section 3 board of directors. I will update the table of contents and align it better with. I will update the table of contents and align it better with the document. Okay, I got that. I see it now. I see what you're saying. I'll fix that. Thank you, Wanda.
So Patrick, you finished with it?
Yes, ma'am.
To conclude, you were talking about like voting majority, and on page 19, section 4, it talks about a voting majority. A voting majority would consist of 2/3 of the active disciples present. And you mentioned earlier that if we were gonna do virtual, that if a person gave $1 and the person get verified through the email and everything, that they can't, that they are still members and qualified. But, and I think that in the old bylaws, it seemed that they took out active member, and active is attending. And I know that the pandemic has created a whole new environment. But also we had in there, active would be somebody that's, to me, and it just seems strange that you said that you could give $1, but you're really not supporting the church. You might come, somebody might give a donation, and then you might not see them for a year or two, but they're giving at least $1. That just doesn't seem like that's somebody that's really supporting the church.
How would you, but then that's the question, isn't it? How do you cleanly define active? That was something we wrestled with in the committee. Because the minute you do that, it gets messy real fast. So matter of fact, the deacons brought that up too. But how do you do it? Nobody can seem to answer that. Because the minute you try to make it more complicated, it gets messy. So let me give you an example. If you say, if I put let's say you put $1 on it. Let's say you said, in order to be a voting member, you got to give $1,000 in the calendar year. Well, if you're on disability and you're a mother of the church and you don't have $1,000 to give, are we saying you can't vote?
Well, you gotta give more than $1 to show.
No. I'm saying, but whatever the number is, we didn't put a number on it. The committee agreed we wasn't gonna put a number on it. I'm using $1 to answer your question. But let's say you put a number. What should be the right number? That was where we got stuck. What should be the right number? Who's to say? That's number one. So even if you my point is, I agree with you. If you only gave $1, you're not really supporting the church. I would agree with you 1,000%. But that's not the question. The question is, should you vote? That's the question. And so the question is, and again, I'm open. That's what this is for. I'm open to a suggestion. If you want to put a number on it, what should the number be? And understand the committee wrestled with that. And that's why we end up saying, you know what, let's not even do a number. Second part to that question, to your point. Let's leave money out of it for a minute, right? Let's say if we said something like, well, active is the number of times you come to church. Well, what does that mean? And how do you measure that? Do you stand up here and make people sign in every time they come to church? Because then how would you really know? Now, back in the day when we were small, and everybody knew everybody like that, you could probably say, I remember seeing them, but that's not accurate. And when you're talking about getting sued, the question would be, well, how do you really know who came to church if you didn't take a roll every time you had church? How do you know? It gets messy. Third, when you add into that now, back to the whole notion of virtual, is virtual being in church? I would say yes. Because they're online, giving, worshiping, like anybody else. They are present. They ain't in the room, they're online. So does being online count as being in church?
Yes, but how do you know, how do you know that person was online?
And we know.
How do you know if that person gave anything?
Well, we know because there are two ways we can know right now. A, you know, if you say anything, we see it because we look. So
some people don't.
No. And B, we don't know exactly who you are. We just know where you came in from. So we can know how many people came from Stockbridge. We don't know who they are. So you're right. I don't know. That's my point. I don't know if you were actually online unless you say something. Other than that, I don't know. We don't know. So even in that's back to my point. How do I measure that? You can't. I can't measure whether you were in church. I can't measure whether you were in church if you come in church on Sunday, unless we take roll every Sunday. How do you know? So so I'm trying to answer your question. I'm really asking. So how do you then define active? Because that's the question. And that's the question that the committee wrestled with. That's the question that the deacons wrestled with. How do you define active without getting messy and without putting yourself in a place where you can't defend it if we really went to court? If you got an answer for that, I'd love to hear it.
Well, let me tell you, one of the reasons, and then I'm gonna let somebody else talk. There was a young lady that I used to work on a team with, and I didn't know that she was not. She was working. She was keeping her. She would come every Sunday, but she would keep her grandchild. And I went to Reverend Black's church, and we were visiting, we're Red Cabin, and we were visiting. So I saw her, and I told her that I missed her. I said, I haven't seen you in a long time. And she said, I haven't been a member of that church in 2 years, but she said she never said that she was not a member here, so she's still on the roll.
So in her case, more than likely, if she really hadn't been here in 2 years, she would not be able to vote, because what would happen is, even if she was still enrolled, she hadn't given in the calendar year. She would not be eligible to vote. Now, if she hadn't been here in 2 years, and let's say she gave something for whatever reason, technically she would be eligible to vote. Now, the only way to fix that is for us to, because remember, it's both. It's roll and giving. So in that scenario, if she didn't give a dime in 2 years, she wouldn't be eligible to vote. But let's say she did. Let's say there was a church anniversary, and she said, you know what? I heard they having church anniversary. I want to send $25. And she did. Technically, she would be eligible to vote because she's still on roll. Now, what we need to do, and I've said this to Doris and the deacons, we need to do better cleaning up our roll. And that doesn't matter. That truth has nothing even to do with the bylaws. It's the fact that we should be having better clarity on who's on our roll, period, right? And the way to do it is go through the roll every year and say, and compare it to the giving list. And if you see people who haven't given in a year, we should immediately send an email, say, hey, are you still an active member of Mount Olive Baptist Church? If not, we're going to be removing you from roll within 30 days if we don't hear from you. Something like that.
You said that you talked about people out of state, bedridden, military, elderly. Suppose I'm an elderly and I'm one of the 92, 98-year-old mother.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't have, I have a fixed income and I'm trying to get my medicine and all. Suppose I give nothing, but I watch every Sunday. That means I can't vote?
That's right, because the way it said, now let me answer your question fully. If you are a 75-year-old woman who watch every Sunday, but you haven't given in a year,
I'm talking about 90-year-old.
90-year-old mother who watches every Sunday, but you haven't given in a year, no, and you haven't given in a year, you cannot vote. That's the bylaw. That's what it says, because it's both. So let me clarify that even further. If you're a 90-year-old mother who watches every Sunday and are on the roll of the church, but you haven't given anything in a year, you're not eligible to vote. Because then what you can say to that mother is, mother, I know you're in a fixed income, but you could at least given $1, right? You could have given something. It's back to the support question. You could have given something, right? You just didn't. So therefore, for this election, you can't vote. Now, that's the current bylaws. And we did it, again, because it's very simple. Are you on roll? Have you given anything? If those two things are yes, you are eligible to vote. And you're 18, you're eligible to vote. And it's easy to manage that. It's not hard. We ain't trying to count how many times you've been here. We're not trying to count how many times you watched. We're not trying to do any of that. We're just trying to make it simple so that if we were ever sued over a vote, we could honestly say, this is what we did to ensure who can vote. This was the criteria, and it was simple. It wasn't complicated. That was the whole point. That's the whole point of bylaws. You want to make sure it's simple so that if you ever got challenged on it in court, you can say, yeah, it was easy to do. We did it, or we didn't.
But last year, I didn't know that I had to give $1, and I didn't know that, but I watched because it was a pandemic. I didn't know I had to give $1.
But here's the difference.
So then maybe you're going to keep me from voting. I've been here for 98 years.
Yes.
92 years.
Yes, we're going to have to hold to that. And we would hold to that today if it wasn't a 90-year-old mother. Because flip that around. What if it was a 25-year-old person who said the same?
You just said the elderly.
No. I'm saying flip it around. What if it was a 25-year-old person, same situation, hadn't been to church, hadn't given anything, maybe watched online, and now they wanted to vote? Are we saying that we should show sympathy on this because it's a mother? Or if it was a 25-year-old who did the same thing, I'd say to them, no, you can't vote.
But they didn't know because we just get the bylaw.
Well, The whole point of this and sharing all this is you should read this so you know. That's the whole reason.
But we're doing, the one that we're doing now, that's if you gave last year.
This won't go into effect. This won't go into effect until 2023, right? So what we're going to be saying to people is, look, if first of all, this won't go into effect until after conference in February, which means we would have already voted on anything of substance
So if
for
you 2022,
well, actually 2023, because we won't have another conference to 2024.
no, but I mean, if you have something 2023, if you gave in 2022, then you're covered.
Well, actually, yes, in theory, but we won't be using these bylaws in 2023 because we're going to vote on them in 2023, right? So the real question is, in 2024, if you didn't give anything in 2023, you probably won't be able to vote.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
I'm sorry for taking apart.
No. This is what this is for. No. Your questions are, let me say this for the record, for everybody, those online, those in your room. The reason we're doing this because we want your questions, because if you don't ask them in here, somebody's going to ask them later, and we want to make sure that we're really addressing everybody's concerns. I don't mind the question. I want the question. So online, if you got a question, ask it. I like that Wanda caught that the table of contents is off. That's what we need. So that by the time we get the conference, we're ready. Go ahead, Robert.
Using military virtual voting is not good. I spent years in the military. The military is not virtual vote. You have to go absent. You have to be a registered voter in your state. You're sending an absentee ballot like everybody else. If you notice, when they have the election, they always say, wait on the military vote. They have to get absentee ballot. Has to be certified by a certification officer and then mailed back to your particular state. Now, this virtual vote, military don't do that.
But we're not comparing ourselves to the United States of America vote.
Like in the military,
No, I'm saying that there's a reason a person could be gone. That's all I'm saying. There's a reason they may not be in the building. That's all I'm saying.
But they were deployed.
Right. They're members of the church. And the reason they're not in the room, because they're in Korea. They're deployed. The reason that the person's not in the room, because they're sick. The reason that the person is not in the room is because they don't live in Georgia anymore. Right? I'm just pointing out there's reasons why people may be virtual. To us, if you're a member in good standing, I really don't care why you're not here, per se. For this purpose, to me, it doesn't. You're still a member of the church. Your voice should still matter. Just because you're not here doesn't lessen your membership. And if that's what we're saying, then that's a problem. Because what we're saying then is the minute you walk out the door and for whatever reason can't get in the room, you're now a second-class member. And you're not. They're as much member as you. Right? So why would we not want to let them give their voice and their opinions to what's going on in their church? Why would we not?
But if they move to a different state, but they don't want to change their membership, how are they gonna make decisions about what's happening here in Georgia and they're living in Timbuktu?
Because first of all, they see themselves as members of the church. They're financially given to the church. They're watching every day online. I've said this in meetings before, and y'all know it to be true, especially people who've been in church all their lives. We all know there are people who never come to church and show up only at conference. They don't care about what's going on in church on a regular weekly basis, but they show up at conference just so they can vote. That's been going on since the beginning of time, especially in the beginning of the Black church. We've always had that problem. It's not new. And the only difference is we put up with it because those people sometimes vote the way we want. That's the truth. So this is not a new phenomenon. The real question that you got to ask yourself again is, if I'm not in the building and I still want to be a member of the Mount Olive Baptist Church, I want to watch and support and give, am I still a member? And if the answer is yes, their voice should be heard like anybody else's. If the answer is no, then we need to rethink this whole thing about what does it mean to be a member who can't be in the room? Because that's what we're talking about. That's really physically what we're talking about. You can't be in the room for whatever the reason. And I just think, I mean, come on. I don't just think it's not even Christian. It's not right for us to think like that. So particularly, again, with a person who maybe can't be here because they really are physically impaired, right? If as Christians, how do we discount them? How do we do that? So no. Anything else? Any other questions or concerns about any other portions of the document? Or any structural questions, like the one that came up with the table of contents? Now, I will tell you, let me give this to you because it came up after our conference. So let me say this as it relates again to the just conference that we just had. So we just had a church conference. I actually wrote it down. So at this last conference, let me get back to it so I can say it appropriately. At this last conference, there were 36 people in the building. 36. Of that 36, 6 could not vote because they were deacons, which means 30 people voted. Now, again, according to old bylaws, quorum is 75%. We're a 1,000-member church at minimum. And that's not including our virtual people. That's just on roll. We're a 1,000-member church. So that would mean over 500 people should have been here. We ain't never had 500 people at a church conference, ever. The most we've ever had that I can recall since I've been here was that conference we did on that Sunday because we did it after church. Okay. So that was, at minimum, we should have had at least 500 people here. Actually, it should have been 750. 750 people should have been here for quorum, right? So we had, if you do the math, half of 750 is what, 350? That would be, it doesn't even matter. I don't even need to, this is less than 1%. That's what I'm getting. So less than 1% of the church was here, right? 30 people voted. When we come back, because we're going to call this conference again, I doubt we'll get more than 50. So the question now is going to become, do we need to do something with quorum? Or are we okay? Here's the real question. Are we okay with less than 1% of the people making decisions for the church? That's the question that's going to be on the table. Are we okay with that? I'm not, but I don't count in this. But personally, I'm not. Go ahead.
Now, you said we had 1,000 people
On roll.
Membership roll, but we don't know that had been occurred.
Let's say it's right for this conversation.
So then 2/3 according to the bylaws, and that would be roughly about 600 people. So 2/3.
No, it'd be 75%. It says 75%. It doesn't say 2/3. It says 75%.
I must be looking at an old bylaw.
Yeah, it actually says 75%.
Voting majority consists of 2/3 of the active members present.
I'm gonna read it to you because I actually captured it the other day. I went to look.
What page?
Hold on, I don't have the old one with me. I just copied the page. But hold on. I'm gonna read it to you because I actually took a picture of it because I was reading it the other day and I wanted to capture it. Hold on, I'm gonna read it to you. If I can get there. A quorum, this is exactly what it says. I'm reading verbatim from.
What page?
This is the old one. I don't have it with me. I don't know the page. Actually, it says 18 on this version that I'm looking at. Section 4, this is the old bylaws. Section 4, quorum, page 18. Quote, a quorum shall consist of 75% of all active voting members within the church who are 18 years or older. That's what it says in the old bylaws. Now, 75% of 1,000, according to my math, is 750, right? So So what we know based on this last meeting, we wasn't close to that. Not even close. So all that being said, the question on the table is, do we revisit quorum somehow or whatever? Or are we okay with the fact, let me put it in real practical terms. We voted, we're gonna vote again, but the vote will be whether we move $300,000 of the church money into an investment account, right? That's the vote. Are y'all okay with the fact that less than 1% of the people in the church can make that decision?
No, I'm not even, my question is, when you announce this meeting,
Which means, you talking about a conference?
we're gonna be in right now.
Uh-huh.
Say what we were gonna be about.
Wait. Are you talking about Q&A? What do you mean? You lost.
The Bylaw. Last week, they said we're gonna have a church conference. Nothing said about what we're going to.
I wouldn't do that from the pulpit. I would just say we having a conference. I wouldn't say that from the pulpit. It would be inappropriate. I'd just say we have a church conference. But that's the point. Even if I did, you think that would have made a difference? Honestly? Stop it. You not know. Come on, Robert.
You said specifically what we will come out for today.
No. This though is normal. We've been saying this all year. That every month we having a Q&A session. But that's different from conference. I don't never ever stand up and say we having church conference. This was on the agenda. I'm not gonna do that from the pulpit. I'm just gonna say we having conference. And what I'll say is whether it's something we're gonna vote on or not. That I will say, because those different kind of meetings, right? Some conferences might be we're not voting on anything, it's for information. Some conferences we're gonna vote on something, you really need to be here. So that's what we emphasize. This is gonna be a conference, it's gonna be a voting matter. This is gonna be a conference, there's no vote taken. That's what we'll say from the pulpit. But hold on. But wait a minute. Even if I did, again, are y'all sitting there trying to say you think that's going to now get us 750 people at the church? No. Come on now. Let's be real. It's not.
But you know what, Pastor? I don't think we would ever, I don't think we would ever get a quorum or majority based on what you're saying, 1,000 members.
I don't either.
You have, even if you purge the road and you had
The
800 members.
The only way you might get it is if, again, we did it on Sunday and it was something big like a pastor call. You might. And even that, you probably wouldn't. I agree with you. I'm saying I agree with you. I don't think you're ever going to get, quote, 75% of the church at the church conference. And here's the real reason why. Because most people are not concerning themselves with this part of the church. Most people say things like this. I'm making decisions at home. I'm making decisions for my family. I'm looking around the church. Church seems like it's doing well. I'm not trying to run the church. Y'all do that. That's why we got leaders. That's what most people believe today. Now, back in the day it was very different. But today's people, they're like, I don't want to go to the restaurant and cook the food. I want to go just eat and enjoy it. I don't want to be involved in that aspect of the church. They don't. Which is why most churches don't even do conference anymore. Progressive ones, they're not doing this anymore because it doesn't work. You can't get quorum, especially when you get 1,000, 2,000, 3,000 member churches, you'll never get quorum. So why are we doing this? Because you're not going to get it. Now, I'm not at that point yet, but what I'm saying is we need to really think about this because this last meeting, to me, proved the point. And I don't think it's wise to have, or right, to have less than 1% of the church making decisions for the church. And I don't think none of y'all do either. But I don't know how to fix that. Here's what I'm thinking about doing, so you hear me say it. If we really believe that the right way of church governance is to vote, I'm willing to say, then every church conference needs to be on a Sunday. Put our money where our mouth is. Let's do it where we know the people will be here.
I'll be more inclined to do that.
I'm willing. That's what I'm about to put on the table. And say, okay, if this is the kind of governance you want, then we need to put ourselves in a position to get the most people here so that we have more voices adding to the decisions we make on behalf of this church. And if that's the case, we need to stop having midweek church conference and always do it on Sunday, and be willing to say, by bylaw, you can only do it on a Sunday.
And that's the first Sunday, really. Because
Whatever.
people here.
Right. Be willing to say, let's really do this right. If that's what we believe, let's put our money where our mouth is. Church conference will only be held on the first Sunday. Period. That way, and say immediately, not 5 o'clock Sunday. Right.
Because you did that one time. You
I did it.
You said that, we're gonna have, the church conference, and for all of those who are not members,
You can leave.
Yeah.
You can sit there if you want, but you can't vote, right? That's back to the point. But my point is this: if that's what we really believe, if we really say this is the way the church should be governed, let's put our money where our mouth is and say, okay, then we only gonna have conference when we can have the probability of the most people being here. Right. But you know what's gonna happen? People say, no, I don't want to do that. And it's because you got people who really don't want to have a lot of people vote. It's like the Republicans.
Well, they may not be in the majority. So
No, I know they're not. But I'm just telling y'all, don't be surprised. Yes, sir.
We've been talking about cleaning up the church road for quite some time. When are you gonna clean it up? We keep saying 1,000 people. Keep saying 750. Even if we had on first Sunday, the sanctuary will only see less than 500 folks, so that's still 75%.
Well, I know that. That's my point. I know that.
My thing is,
But wait. Let me ask you a question first, because you said clean the road. You dispute that there's 1,000 people at this church. You don't think there's 1,000 people in this church? I know there is. Let me put it this way. We see that church, like you said, the church seats almost 600, right? Yeah, it does. When you put the choir and everybody together. But I'm gonna use your number, 5. Let's say 5. Let's say 5, right? We're seeing 300 and something people on Facebook by itself. We see another 200 to 300 on our website, plus another 100 on YouTube. So on any given Sunday, in addition to what's sitting here, we're still seeing about 700 more people online. So, and most of those are members of the church. So I know we got more than 1,000 members here. It's not even a question. Matter of fact, the last time I reported the numbers in conference, we were already breaking the seams at 1,000 people. That's not even a question. So, and that's not even the point. Even if, to your point, I'll give you your 5. I'll say for this conversation, we only got 500 members of the church. That right there is over 250 people in conference. We don't get that. You know it, and I know it too. Even at 5, half of that is 250. We've never, outside that one Sunday, we never had more than 100 people at conference since I've been here. Come on now.
So if we have 500 people, and then you say YouTube have about 300.
No, about 100 on YouTube. Let me say it again. About 100 on YouTube, about another 300, about another 200 on our website,
Okay.
and about another 300 on Facebook.
So those 200 or 300 that come on
Oh.
YouTube and Facebook, how do you verify that person is a member of the church?
So again,
So does that mean that they're watching it online, but like you said, they gave $1 or something? How do you verify that those people that you're watching are?
So again, you're talking about the how. So let's say we just use email. Let's not even think about the other tools that are available. Let's say we just use email. And like you said, let's say we were having a conference and it was going to be voting, right? Let's say this is 2004 and the same issue on the table, whether we're going to invest some money. That's the conference, right? New bylaws are in place. Now what we can announce is we're going to have a church conference in 2 weeks. If you're virtual and would like to vote, please send an email to the church to request your ballot. So they send an email to the church, say, I want a ballot. First thing Darsh and them should do is say, is this person eligible? Yes. Send them a ballot. That's it. They fill it out, send it back. Done. That's not hard. Now your virtual people just voted.
Yeah, but you're saying that when you see
No,
150 or 200 on YouTube or what have you, that we have 1,000 members because they're watching, but do you know for sure that
No,
they are?
I don't know for sure.
Because like, for instance, when the pandemic, before I was coming to church, I was going to like 2 or 3 different churches. I go to my son's church, Jacksonville. I'm one of the 200 or 300 people, but I'm
not saying it that way. I'm saying of that population, some of them are members. My point is, I know we're over 1,000 members of the church, but that's why I said, let's leave that out.
Okay.
I'll use 500. If we had just 500 members of this church right now, half of that is 250. We've never had 250 people at a conference. That's my point. The more people you add, the worse it gets. At 500, which we all, I think, in this room and online could agree, we definitely got more than 500 people here at this church, right? But let's use 500. At 500 people, at 75%, we would never hit quorum. Would you agree with that? Yes. At 500 people, at 75%, we would never hit quorum. Never.
Now, I don't see what the 75%, you said that.
That's the old one.
The old one?
Right.
Because that's probably a little high.
That's what it is. I'm just reading it.
I know you read it. I'm just saying 75%, it seems like half an attainable goal.
Of course it is. But then now you back to the question, right? What should the number be? That's where I don't either. But that's the question. What should it be? I don't know. Should it be 20%? Because the real question is, and again, I really want y'all to think, because y'all helping us. Here's the real question. What is the number that you're comfortable with? What is the comfortable number of people deciding the business of the church? That's the question. Is it 10%? Would you be okay if 10% of the people made the decisions for the church?
Well, it seems like 1% has been making.
Less than one. There's been less than one. Let's be real. But that's the question. What percentage would sit well with you? Is it 10? Is it 5? Is it 15? I know it ain't 1. That I know. 1 don't sit well with me. I don't know what that number should be, but I think it's something we should think about, because the truth is, even in the new bylaws, what happened in this last conference could happen again. And less than 1% of the people could be making a major decision for the church, which is why I'm going to recommend that if we're serious about this, we should put in the bylaws that church conference should be held on first Sundays immediately after service. Because that puts us in a position to have the most people in the room to make a decision for the church. And when those people push back and say, I don't want to do that, then I'm going to ask why. Why is that a problem for you? If you really believe in this, why is that a problem? And I'm gonna wait to hear some of them answers. I know they're coming. Somebody just said 25% would sit well with them. I think that was James said he thinks 25% would be a good number. But let's play that out again. What's 25% of 500? It's 250, right? No, that's half. It would be 120, 125, 125.
25% would be about 300.
No. 500.
500. Oh.
I think it's 125, right?
125 is a quarter.
125. So that means if we had a 500 member church, 125 people will have to be in the room or online, the combination of the two. Again, outside of that one Sunday, I don't ever remember us having 125 people in the room. And if y'all do, help me, maybe before I got here, but I don't remember ever having a conference with 100 people. So that's something we had to wrestle with, y'all. And if nothing else, this last conference should have helped us appreciate how real this is. Because this is just this is one issue, an investment of funds. What if it was really the calling of the pastor, or the removal of a pastor, something major, or buying a new property, or any major thing? Right now, 1% of the church would be making that decision.
Well, yes, basically 1% of the church did build this, made the decision to build this whole building.
Yeah, if you think about it, less than one. We use on one. It's really less than one. Less than 1% of the people made a decision that prompted us to be sitting where we're able to sit right now. Nobody would say that's a bad thing, but it's a real thing, at least this time in that decision.
And that's the same thing as what you were saying. Go to a restaurant. I don't want to cook. I just want to eat.
I just want to eat.
So a lot of the members, they want to be members true enough, but I'm not interested in voting or any of that.
No.
Take care of it.
Y'all take care of it.
Church that I can go to, and it's nice and clean. I'm good.
I'm good. I can look
But
around.
if that's the case, then you go back to Robert's saying about if you're gonna let other people, if you're not gonna vote, then you need a check and balance so that if you got this community doing one thing, just like it is in the country, you got an executive, legislative, and judicial. So, I mean, it ain't because somebody doing anything wrong, but it's a check and balance so that one person does something and this, so that's why you go back to the check and balance if you're not going to do the voting.
Well, like I said, if we weren't going to do voting, that would change the whole thing, right? Then we would have to rethink the whole governance of the church, right? Because that's what this is. This is a document that talks about how we govern. If we were to get rid of that, then of course everything would change because we'd have to look at a new model of governance. But one of the things that I talk about with the deacons a lot, and let me say this again since we're in this forum together. Growth forces change. It always does. If you got a little business where you make cakes for people, you do 10 cakes here, 10 cakes there from your kitchen, great. But if you blew up tomorrow because your cakes was that good, and you went from having to do maybe 10 cakes a year to 200 cakes in a week, the way you do that won't work. It'll cause you to fail. First of all, you probably can't do 200 cakes in a week in your little kitchen, and definitely can't do it by yourself. Got high help, right? You got to expand. Growth forces change, and if you don't change with the growth, you fail. That applies to church too, by the way. When you're a small 100-member church, by the way, again, I'm teaching now. The average church in the United States is 100 members or less. People think we're mega church. Mega churches are normal. They are not. Mega churches, meaning 3,000 or more, is only 1%, represents 1% of church population. 1%. The average church is think of a pyramid. At the top of the pyramid, where it's thinnest, that's the 1%. 3,000 or more churches sit at the top. That's 1%. You come down in the pyramid, the biggest size, and as you get to the bottom, that's where the most churches are. The average church in the United States is 100 members. 100. We are considered a mid-sized church. We're not 3,000, but we ain't 100. We're in the middle. And so we need to start rethinking how we govern the church. Because if we keep growing, we're going to eventually be a 3,000 member church. And that growth is going to force us to change how we do things, whether we like it or not. And we have to accept that reality or we'll fail. So I'm just saying, something to think about. Yes, sir.
How do you grow a lot of people? So many on the street. A lot of people come out, but when it comes to work, maintenance, and all that other stuff, it can't be found.
That's right.
Therefore, that's one reason I'm so scared about this virtual vote for people. They don't show, they don't do nothing to come and vote. See, somebody else got to do the work.
Okay, I agree with we are. I really wish y'all could appreciate how much I agree with you. I agree with you. I do. As a pastor, I don't like the fact that 20% of the people do all the work.
And you said that many times.
Right. Do you think I like that? Of course I don't. Nobody does. But that's the nature of church and the nature of people. I get you. I feel you. I'm with you. But how do you regulate that? That's the question. And that's the part, that's the hard part that I keep trying to get y'all to hear. I agree with you. I wish there was an easy way to say only people who do the work vote. I wish there was a way to measure that. How do you measure that? You can't, because the minute you try, it gets really messy really fast. I wish there was an easy way to do it. I keep saying it. If one of y'all come up with something, tell me. I'd love to hear it. But the minute you try it, you see it, it becomes messy. Okay, anybody who voted, anybody who worked. Okay, so do you say everybody who's assigned to a ministry gets to vote? Well, then if you want to, and I know, now let's use the choir. Is every choir member here every Sunday? No. So just because you in the choir list don't mean you singing, right? So even if you did that, it starts to break down real fast. I agree with you. I wish there was a way that we can define an active member in a clean way, but there isn't any that I can find. It just isn't. I wish there was. I really do. But there isn't. So what do we do? Do we put ourselves in? Do we do it just because, and then mess around, and then get sued because somebody don't like our vote, and then the judge says, "Well, you say right here you had to be active member, and you got to do this. How do you know that they're really active?" And now we stuck. I don't know, Yana. We just did it. You lost, because that's what's gonna happen. So I agree with you. I really do. I just don't know how to do it. And if y'all come up with something, please tell me. But I can't. I've tried.
If it was announced and the proper time and people still didn't come, then they have no case.
No. That's not the question. The question is, are they eligible to vote? That's what we're talking about. Who's eligible? And by the way, I don't want to say this part on camera. Hold on. Is there anything else? Is there anybody else online before we wrap? I gotta go. Anybody else online? Got any other questions before we wrap? Make sure I'm not missing anything, because I can see better on this my phone than online. Any comments? Okay, I don't see any others. All right, thank you for those online. We're gonna wrap at 2:00. So I'll be announcing the next one for the next Q&A session. So again, please read the bylaws, bring your questions to the forum, and make sure we address them. Thank you, and God bless.